It was in a damp London autumn that the affair of the disordered telegrams first came under my notice.
Many years have passed since then, and until now certain reasons of prudence have compelled me to withhold the narrative. Some who were involved have gone to their accounts, and certain measures of state have long since been altered or abandoned. I may therefore set down the facts without danger to any interest save that of the truth itself. On that particular evening the fog pressed yellow and thick against the window panes of Baker Street. The gas was already lit, and Holmes sat coiled in his armchair, his keen eyes half veiled by a thin curtain of smoke. I had laid aside my medical journal and was musing upon the strange chances that had linked my life with his.
"There is a gentleman to see you, sir, and he seems in a great taking."
Mrs. Hudson stood in the doorway, her anxious glance turning from my companion to myself.
A gentleman in a great taking, Mrs. Hudson, is precisely the sort of visitor whom we most desire. Pray admit him, and be so good as to see that he does not escape until I have had one look at his boots.
A moment later she ushered in a broad-shouldered man in rough country clothes, his hat crushed nervously between his work-worn hands.
His face was browned by weather, yet the skin beneath was sallow with anxiety and want of sleep. His grey eyes passed uneasily from me to Holmes and finally settled upon the spare figure in the armchair.
Pray be seated, sir, and give us the facts in your own manner and at your own pace.
I am no hand at fine words, gentlemen, and I may bungle the telling of it. My name is John Barrow, and I farm Barrow Farm in Warwickshire, as my wife did before me and her father before her.
He spoke slowly in the deliberate fashion of the countryside, yet his voice trembled with some inner strain.
Holmes inclined his head slightly and let his eyes travel from the crown of the battered hat to the clumsy boots upon the man's feet.
You have come up from the country in haste, Mr. Barrow, and much against your inclination. The matter touches both your family and your land, and you already reproach yourself for seeking the help of strangers.
Well now, sir, I would liefer face a winter storm on the hill than a London office, but I saw no other way. It is money and it is family, and it is more than both, for it is the farm itself and the right to stand upon it.
Barrow stared at Holmes with the half-frightened, half-admiring look which I had seen upon so many faces when his powers were displayed.
There is a gentleman from the government, Mr. Henry Kerslake by name, who has set his mind on our land. He says they are buying for the good of the country, and that our valley is wanted for trials of guns and engines. He talks smooth of compensation and patriotic duty, but I told him the farm was not mine to sell in that fashion. It came from my wife's people, and it is held in trust for my daughter Ellen, as her mother wished upon her deathbed.
The rough hands tightened upon the crushed hat, and there was a depth of feeling in the simple speech which impressed me deeply.
I thought that was the end of it, sir, but it was nothing of the kind. He came again and again, always more pressing, always with more talk of orders from above and acts of Parliament. Then came the telegram from my girl in London, and that was the worst blow of all.
At the word telegram, Holmes's eyes flashed, and his long figure seemed to stiffen like a hound that has caught the first taint of the quarry.
You will oblige me, Mr. Barrow, by telling us as nearly as you can the words of the message.
I have it by me, sir, for I could not burn it, though it has been like a knife in my heart.
He thrust a hand into his coarse jacket and produced a folded pink form, which he held out with evident reluctance.
Holmes took it between finger and thumb and laid it upon the arm of his chair without yet glancing at it.
First tell us where you felt, Mr. Barrow, when that paper was put into your hand.
I felt the floor go from under me, sir, for the words were not my Ellen's words, yet they stood there in her name. I was at the little station about cattle, and the clerk called out that there was a message waiting for me. It said she had executed papers in London for the transfer of her property, and that I was not to stand in the way of what the government thought necessary. There was no dear father, no blessing, no word such as she would put into any letter written with her own hand.
His voice broke for an instant, and he looked down at his rough fingers as though ashamed of their helplessness.
And a visit of Mr. Kerslake followed hard upon the message, no doubt.
He was at the farm next day, sir, with a printed paper ready for my signature and talk of how my own daughter had set her name before mine. He said I was standing not only against the government but against my child's wishes, and that such stubbornness could not prevail. I turned him from the door with hard words, yet at night I sat by the fire with that paper and that telegram upon the table before me. A man will stand firm against strangers, sir, but when it seems his own flesh and blood has turned, his heart fails him.
I could well understand the struggle which the honest fellow described, for I have seen men who faced pain yet surrendered to doubt.
You did not sign, however, or we should not have the pleasure of your company.
I did not, sir, for there was something in me that said the words were wrong, though I could not say where the wrong lay. So I came here to ask if you, who are said to have a gift beyond other men, can tell me whether my girl has indeed betrayed the farm.
Holmes picked up the telegram and ran his eyes over the clipped official phrases which were so much at variance with the voice of her daughter.
Your daughter is in London, and she is in some employment there.
She is a copying clerk in a government office, sir, and she lodges with a decent woman near the river.
Then we shall test whether this message bears the stamp of a loving child or of a weary bureau. What do you say, Watson, to a breath of country air followed by a plunge into the brown waters of Whitehall?
I replied that I was entirely at his service, for the sight of Barrow's distress had already enlisted my sympathy.
You have done wisely to come to us, Mr. Barrow, and I shall, if I can, set your mind at rest. Return to your farm and hold yourself firm against all pressure until you have word from me.
If you tell me my girl has turned against me, sir, I must bear it as I can, but I would sooner hear a shot through the window than such words.
You shall hear nothing from me that is not grounded upon fact, Mr. Barrow.
With many clumsy expressions of gratitude, he took his departure, leaving with us the impression of an honest soul sorely tried. Holmes sat for some time in silence, his eyes half closed and the telegram balanced upon his long knee.
Here we have something more than a rustic family quarrel, Watson. We have a smallholder's right set against certain gentlemen who shelter themselves behind the name of the state.
I remarked that land was often required for public purposes, and that such acquisitions might still be lawful, though harsh.
Lawful in name, perhaps, but not always lawful in method. Observe the language of this telegram, which purports to come from a farmer's daughter. It speaks of executed papers, transfer, necessary measures, and property, or in the bald idiom of an office. It is possible that Miss Barrow has absorbed this jargon, but I confess that I doubt it most gravely.
He rose, thrust the form into his pocket, and began to pace the room with quick, eager steps.
We shall take the morning train for Warwick and view the Barrow farm with our own eyes, Watson.
Early next day, we found ourselves once more in the English countryside, whose green and brown patchwork Holmes regarded with his usual indifference. Our destination lay in a shallow valley where the railway curved and a narrow stone bridge carried the line over a little stream. Beyond the bridge a plume of blue smoke and a cluster of roofs marked the farmstead that was the subject of our errand. Barrow met us at the tiny station, his broad figure made broader by the heavy coat which he had donned against the keen air.
It is good of you to come, gentlemen, and I hope you will not think ill of the place because it is plain.
We assured him that no such thought had entered our minds, and Holmes cast a swift glance along the lane that led from the station.
First the farm, then the telegraph office, and afterwards such neighbours as may enlighten us.
Barrow Farm stood upon a gentle rise overlooking the stream, and the railway beyond, and the house was low and rambling with signs of careful hands upon it. Holmes walked slowly about the yard, noting the outbuildings, the line of the fields, and a small knoll that commanded a view of the railway bridge.
A piece of ground with such a view is worth more than its acreage would suggest, Watson.
We were shown into the parlour, a stiff and shining room, where the oak table and chairs bore the trace of a woman's hand long withdrawn. Upon the mantelpiece stood a photograph of a bright-faced young woman whose features plainly proclaimed her kinship to our host. Holmes took it up and studied it gravely before laying it down again.
Your daughter, Mr. Barrow.
That is Ellen, sir, when she first went up to London with the new dress her mother had saved for.
Having learnt what we could there, Holmes proposed that we should see the telegraph office at the station. The office was a narrow room with a high desk upon which stood the familiar brass instrument and a pile of forms, and behind it a lean elderly clerk with sandy whiskers.
You had some days since a telegram from Mr. John Barrow, Barrow Farm.
So I had, sir, and a rare taking he was in when he read it. It is not every day a man hears that his land is to be taken, and by his own daughter's wish at that.
You recall clearly the arrival of that message.
Clear as print, sir, for the gentleman from the ministry had been here earlier, asking when it might be expected.
The gentleman from the ministry interests me. You will describe him.
A youngish gentleman, well set up, with London clothes and a quick tongue.
The description tallied well enough with our notion of Kerslake.
He saw the telegram, no doubt.
He was in the office when the instrument began to chatter and I took down the words. He said it would be simpler if he made sure it was in order, seeing that it touched his department. After that there was some confusion with other messages, and I set the times down later as best I could remember.
Holmes's eyes grew keen at this, though his manner remained perfectly composed.
You keep a day book of the messages you receive and dispatch.
That I do, sir, for it is required.
You will oblige me by letting me see the entries for the day upon which Mr. Barrow received his telegram.
The clerk produced a dog-eared volume, and Holmes turned its pages rapidly, his gaze darting from line to line.
I saw that several entries upon the relevant page were cramped and crowded, as though they had been written between earlier lines.
You're sure of these times, my good man?
Sure as a man can be who has more messages than fingers, sir.
That is near enough for our purpose.
As we walked back toward the farm, Holmes halted upon the little ridge from which Bow Farm and railway bridge were visible.
There is enough here to justify a closer look at our friends in Whitehall, Watson. We have a farm that commands a useful view, a farmer who will not sell, and a daughter whose supposed message contradicts her character. Above all, we have confusion where there should be plain order.
That night we slept at the small inn near the station, and early next morning we were on our way back to London. Before noon we were in Baker Street once more, where Mrs. Hudson had our meal ready, and looked with curiosity upon our mud-stained boots.
After we had eaten, Holmes sent a note to Scotland Yard and another to an address in Whitehall, and then fell into that deep abstraction which I had long since learned not to disturb.
It was late in the afternoon when the sharp professional knock of Inspector Lestrade sounded upon our door.
Well, Mr. Holmes, you have drawn me away from my own work again, and there are some who will not thank you for it. What is this about land and ministers and farmers who will not sign when they are told?
You're always welcome, Lestrade. Pray take a chair. Have you heard the name of Henry Kerslake in connection with government land purchases?
I have heard it, and so have others. There are whispers of money taken in ways that will not bear the light, but there are powerful persons behind him.
That is precisely why we must tread carefully and quickly. I shall ask you to accompany us tomorrow to his department.
The following day saw us in the great stone building in Whitehall, where after some delay we were shown into a bare waiting room. Presently a well-dressed gentleman of about 35 entered, whose quick glance and air of authority left us in little doubt that this was Henry Kerslake.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, this is an honour I had not expected. I am told that you desire some explanation of our procedure with regard to land purchases.
Explanation is too strong a word, Mr. Kerslake. We seek information concerning a particular farm in Warwickshire.
Arrow Farm is a trifle, Mr. Holmes, and a stubborn trifler of a man stands in the way of public needs.
So stubborn that he has come to us. He declares that a telegram bearing his daughter's name does not in fact represent her wishes.
The man is a fool. The message bears the proper form and stands duly entered in the proper books.
It is the proper books that interest me. You will not object to our seeing the day sheets for the date upon which the telegram was sent.
These are official documents, and I cannot show them to satisfy mere scruples.
If I may say a word, Mr. Kerslake, I am here from Scotland Yard, and any irregularity in those records falls within our duty. If Mr. Holmes has reason to suspect falsification, it is better for all concerned that the matter be cleared quietly.
After a pause, Kerslake rang for a clerk, and a packet of day sheets and registers was placed upon the table. Holmes bent over them with absorbed attention, his finger moving swiftly down the columns of figures and names.
You see, Watson, that Miss Ellen Barrow's message appears here at 3:10, the earliest entry on this subject.
I agreed that such was the appearance.
Yet we know that certain instructions concerning this very property were issued some days earlier. There are at least 2 orders here, and the clock does not point in the same direction in both.
I could not follow his reasoning in detail, but I recognized the tone, which told me that some discrepancy had already disclosed itself to his trained eye.
Mr. Kerslake, were you yourself present in the telegraph office when Miss Barrow's message was dispatched?
I was in conference with my superiors at the time.
You were sufficiently interested, however, to inquire at the local station when it might be expected.
I acted within my duty. The interests of the state demanded prompt action.
When the interests of the state are used as a cloak for private convenience, the cloth is apt to wear thin.
Kerslake flushed slightly, but he made no direct reply. Leaving the ministry, we next sought out Miss Barrow at her modest lodgings near the river. She was a pale yet resolute young woman with steady grey eyes that met ours bravely as we entered the little sitting room.
You are Mr. Holmes. My father wrote that he was going to you, and I have waited anxiously for news.
We have seen your father, Miss Barrow, and we are here to ask you about the telegram you sent him.
I sent a message, Mr. Holmes, but my father's letter quoted other words which I never dispatched.
You will tell us as nearly as you can what you actually wrote.
I begged him to sign nothing until I could come down and speak with him, for I feared that some persons might be seeking their own profit under cover of the office. I added that I trusted him and that he was not to be overborne by fine talk, and I sent him my love and blessing.
You went yourself to the telegraph office near your work?
Yes, at my dinner hour, and I handed the form to the clerk at the desk, who read it and said nothing.
You are well acquainted, through your work, with the official phrasing of messages and reports.
I have copied many such drafts, Mr. Holmes, and I knew at once, from my father's letter, that the supposed telegram was written in that style and not in mine.
Holmes asked closely as to the hour of sending and the persons present, and learned of a young clerk who had spoken respectfully to the man behind the counter. He then examined a small notebook in which Miss Barrow had privately set down certain irregularities she had observed in her office. From these slight yet telling hints, my friend's theory took firmer shape, and within 2 days he had gathered proof that the order of telegrams and official memoranda had been artfully rearranged. We returned once more to Barrow Farm, taking Inspector Lestrade with us, for the time had come to confront Henry Kerslake with the result of our labours. The autumn mist lay low upon the fields as we approached the house, and a lamp already burned in the parlour, though the day was not far spent.
He is here now, gentlemen, in my parlour, with another man to witness my name, and he says the matter must be finished today.
Then our arrival is well timed. Let us join your guests, Mr. Barrow, and see if we cannot lighten Mr. Kerslake's burden of papers.
We entered the parlour to find Kerslake standing by the table, upon which a long document lay spread, while another gentleman sat near the fire with a pen in his hand.
This is irregular, Mr. Barrow, to bring strangers into a matter of state business.
It is the manner in which state business has been conducted that brings us here, Mr. Kerslake. You will sit down, if you please, for we have a little examination to make in your presence.
Holmes laid his collection of papers upon the table, and ranged them in order, while Barrow hovered in the background, his rough hands trembling.
Here is a telegram which Mr. Barrow received, and here is the original form as photographed at the London office. Here also are the day sheets from both offices, and the memorandum authorising the purchase of this farm before the date of the supposed consent. Taken together, they show that the true order of events has been inverted.
In clear and simple language, he then set out the steps by which the warm and hesitating message of a daughter had been replaced by cold official form. He showed how the original entry had been disturbed, how the times had been written from memory under outside influence, and how the forged wording had been made to stand as if it were the first and only voice upon the matter.
This is a tissue surmise, and you will find no court to listen to it.
We have more than surmised, Mr. Kerslake. We have the sworn word of the sender, the admission of the clerks, and the documentary proof that the order from your department preceded any message from the daughter.
I care little for courts, sir. You have given me back my child's honour, and that is enough for me.
You will care for the court, Mr. Kerslake. I arrest you on a charge of conspiracy to defraud and of falsifying official records with intent to deceive.
Kerslake started as though struck, yet he saw in Lestrade's keen face and in Holmes's steady gaze that resistance would be useless.
He suffered the handcuffs to be placed upon his wrists and was led from the room without another word. Barrow stood motionless for a moment, then turned to Holmes with a simple dignity which moved me more than any speech.
You have given me back my girl and my land, sir. I have no words fit to thank you, but if ever you need a man to stand by you with what little strength he has, send for John Barrow.
You pay me in a coin I value highly, Mr. Barrow, for gratitude is rarer than gold in certain circles that I know.
On the following morning we returned to London, leaving father and daughter reconciled and the farm for the time secured.
What followed belongs rather to the records of the yard and the departments than to these pages. It is enough to say that the regulations concerning official communications were tightened and that certain persons resigned sooner than they had intended.
As for Holmes, he dismissed the whole business with a shrug when I ventured to praise his conduct.
It was a simple question of restoring the true order of events, Watson. Our adversary did not invent facts, he merely shifted the order in which men were allowed to perceive them. A change in order may alter meaning as profoundly as any change of words.
Such was the adventure of the disordered telegrams, which remained long among my unpublished notes.
If I now give it to the world under a slight veil, it is because I believe that its lesson is not confined to the time at which it occurred.
It shows how easily the instruments of government may be turned against the very persons whose obedience they demand.
It shows also how the clear conscience of simple folk may pierce a web of fraud more surely than the sharpest lawyer's quibbles.
Above all, it bears witness that while Sherlock Holmes walked this earth, there was at least one man to whom high and low alike might turn for justice. You have stayed with me to the end of this history, and I am deeply grateful for your patience and company. If the tale has pleased you, I would most kindly ask you to show it by marking your approval and by subscribing to this channel, that you may not miss the next of our Untold cases. Should you be moved to leave a comment with your reflections or questions, I shall count it an additional honor, for in such exchanges these old adventures find new life. You will see in the lower corner of the screen and in the description beneath a means by which you may, if you wish, support our continued labors through a contribution. In that same description you will find links that lead to other stories of a wholly different series, which yet may interest a mind that has followed this one so faithfully.
And so I bid you a very cordial farewell, trusting that we may meet again when the next case from the untold annals of Sherlock Holmes is laid before you.